I'm here interviewing Professor Dr Mew at the London School for Facial Orthotropics. So I've got some questions for you, John, that I think our viewers would like to know. I understand that you have a background in orthodontic surgery.
Yes, I trained at East Grinstead Hospital, which I think at the time was probably the top orthodontic surgeon in the world. Anyway, I spent nearly 4 years there and saw an awful lot of blood, but learnt a lot about what it is that really makes the jaws look right, look wrong, and what you can do about it.
And how did this lead you into orthotropics?
Well, I could see that many of the faces we were treating just had grown differently from normal. And I thought to myself, well, why do some people grow wrong and the others grow right? And I had this philosophy that there's a reason for everything. So I just got busy trying to think of all the possible reasons there could have been.
And what are the consequences from extraction and retraction treatment that you've seen in your practice?
It depends. It's very difficult to make generalizations. You'll feel, you'll meet people who will have very strong feelings one way or the other. The reality is that extractions are often damaging, but not always damaging. And it is difficult to balance which. Essentially, if the oral posture, in other words, if the patient keeps their mouth shut, you can take teeth out without causing much damage. But if the patient tends to leave their mouth open a lot, and you remove teeth, will often damage the face quite severely.
And what exactly is the damage that occurs through this type of treatment?
Essentially, good-looking faces grow like this, with good cheekbones, a nice-shaped lips and a square chin, whereas people who leave their mouth open, as I did when I was a young lad, tend to have long faces like this. Their cheeks are very flat, like this, and their jawline is quite oblique, like that. And I'm afraid they're not considered so attractive.
But it's not merely facial consequences, is that right? It's the airway as well, from what I understand.
Many people pay great attention to the airway, as obviously it is essential. I put much greater emphasis on correcting the growth of the jaws, because if you do that, nobody will have any problems with the airway. So in terms of priorities, I would correct the jaw. But if you're too late and the patient is already an adult, then you have no option but to try and address the airway itself. But clearly, that is never as satisfactory.
For an adult, what options does an adult have, aside from surgery, to correct prior orthodontics?
Well, if an adult has a severe problem, then it is usually surgery that is required. And the majority of children, indeed, are examined at intervals, and if they are severe, they wait till they are about 18 or 20 and then have surgery. And that was the work that I used to do. But you can treat these same children younger without any surgery at all. And that is a matter which interests me and makes me concerned about the number of children who receive surgery simply because no one provided any treatment for them while they were young.
To date, what progress has been made in promoting the orthotropic or growth guidance philosophy?
Well, it's not through lack of trying. I think it's a simple thing in this world. You come along with a new message and nobody listens at all. The most, later on they'll say, well, yes, this crank keeps on going about this. Eventually, when they've heard it for about the fifth or sixth time, they'll say, this guy's got something. And hopefully one day they'll say, well, it was obvious all along. Why did we ever think anything else? But we haven't quite got there yet.
When do you think that time will come?
After I'm dead, I'm fairly sure. It's taken me 40 years really to get much interest at all. And I think it'll be another 40 before the majority of people are convinced.
So in addition to many individual anecdotes, I'm familiar with the twin study that you did, the landmark twin study, as well as some studies done with monkeys demonstrating vertical growth when the nose and or tongue are blocked. Is there any additional research currently in progress?
Right, we are doing some research currently, but there is a huge gap between the time and period when you do the research, then having to prepare it in order for publication, and then having to send it for publication. Unfortunately for us, virtually all the published journals are orthodontic journals, and orthodontists generally don't believe in growth guidance. They feel that it is a matter of aligning the teeth which is most important, whereas we feel that it is correcting the growth of the face. Therefore, it is not easy to get papers published, and some of my best papers have taken 6, 8, in one case 13 years before it was published, having been turned down 8 times by different orthodontic journals.
And why did they turn it down?
Well, they believe one thing, I believe another. And they basically are the senior citizens in this. I'm the newcomer with fresh ideas. And newcomers always have to prove themselves. The establishment is accepted without proof. But if you want to change the establishment, you have to produce proof.
What is it going to take for orthotropics to be proven?
That is an interesting question. I don't think it's a question of science. I think it's a question of public demand. The public can see that facial results of orthotropics are far, far better than the facial results of orthodontics. They see this, and to them, the face matters more than the teeth. That is what is ultimately going to provide the change.
One of the techniques used in traditional orthodontics frequently is headgear and other forms of retraction. It seems that the belief is that in these cases the upper jaw is too far forward and the lower jaw needs to catch up. At least that's what I was told when I was a child. Is the upper jaw ever too far forward naturally? In my opinion, most certainly not. Every single time I have measured good-looking faces, they have always been considerably further forward than less attractive faces. And there is no doubt that the further you take the upper jaw back, the less attractive the face looks. Of course, it also has the effect that as the jaw goes back, it swings the lower jaw down. Therefore, not only does it move back, but the whole face gets longer, and you finish with much less room for the teeth, which of course is why they're crowded. Another technique frequently used in traditional orthodontics is extractions. Do you think it is ever appropriate to extract teeth?
That's a difficult question. I never extract teeth, but that's because I'm treating patients at the age of 6, 7, 8, maybe 10. And then you can virtually always treat them without the need for any extractions. However, if they have a severely crowded mouth and you don't see them until 12, 14, 16, sometimes there's just not time to get the necessary growth correction to provide room for the teeth. So yes, you have to take teeth out. But of almost more concern is the fact that orthodontists say, many of them, we don't take teeth out, we just line up the ones that are there by changing the jaw a bit. In reality, they're pulling all the teeth back. That then means there isn't room for the wisdom teeth. So that although they're saying there are no extractions, in reality, the extractions are just delayed until the patient is 18, 20, or sometimes over.
So basically you're saying that braces themselves, the force generated from braces, is retraction in itself. Is that right?
Braces, of course, are mechanical and are stuck to the teeth. The effect of braces tends to increase vertical growth. That tends to cause the face to go back, which increases the crowding. That is why at the end of treatment they have to hold the teeth straight, because otherwise they would become crooked again. If you can get the face to grow forward, then there is much more room for the teeth, and they tend to stay straight afterwards. You do still need to train the patient to keep their mouth shut, but it's much easier to do that if you've got a fairly square face.